Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed 3 bills into law in an effort to deter illegal immigration. His state shares a 1,200-mile border with Mexico. The legislation earmarks money for increased barrier constructions, makes it a state crime for illegally crossing from Mexico, and increases the minimum sentence for illegally smuggling immigrants from 2 years to 10. Civil rights organizations have already filed a lawsuit challenging the law, which is expected to go into effect next year. And here to talk more about the sweeping legal action is Carine Martinez, an expert in border security, immigration, and U.S.-Mexico relations with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Carine, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate it. So what more can you tell us about this legislation and its potential impact in deterring illegal immigration?
So in 3 different ways, there are 3 pieces of legislation. The most controversial one is SB 4 from the 4th special session, which creates a state offense for crossing illegally into the state of Texas from a foreign nation, and authorizes judges to order the removal of illegal immigrants to the state, back to Mexico. This will hopefully deter immigrants from crossing illegally between the ports of entry. Right now, the situation is that it's very dangerous because they're crossing the Rio Grande. A lot of them die from this type of crossing, and the cartels are basically having operational control of the border and deciding where the migrants are crossing. So this law will send a message to Mexico that Texas will not allow that, will not allow human smuggling, and will not allow unlawfulness in Texas coming from Mexico.
Give us an idea, if you can, how the flow of illegal migration has impacted the state of Texas and why they felt this law was so necessary.
So it first impacts the border communities, of course. You have, let's take, for example, the town of Eagle Pass that has less than 30,000 inhabitants, and which is seeing thousands of migrants entering every day these days. So this has a cost on the healthcare system, on the public education system. It's very difficult for these communities to keep them, to house them. And a lot of times those migrants don't want to stay at the border. This is one thing, but another thing that is really important to know also, and right now this is happening, we're seeing very large groups of migrants arriving at certain points on the border in Arizona right now, and also in Eagle Pass and Del Rio right now. Nobody crosses the border without the Mexican cartel's authorization. And what happens, and Border Patrol has confirmed that, is that when you're seeing large group of migrants arriving at one point, it's likely that they're trying to enter some people who don't want to get caught, or drugs at other points. And because Border Patrol has to deal and process the migrants, they're not able to patrol the border where it's possibly open, where there's no barrier. And that's also why another bill passed that will increase the appropriation for building border barrier infrastructure.
Carine, we have about a minute or so left, but I do want to ask you this. Federal courts have ruled that immigration laws can only be enforced by the federal government. That said, at what point do states' rights trump federal law, and do you anticipate this turning into a court battle between the Lone Star State and the Fed?
So it's possible. We don't think that bill is first. We don't think it's unconstitutional, or that it's doing the federal government's job of enforcing immigration laws. It creates a state offense. Under the U.S. Constitution and the 10th Amendment, all the powers that are not delegated to the federal government and are not prohibited to the state are reserved for the states and the people, right? And during under Arizona v. U.S., which is the case that a lot of people refer to in the case of state handling immigration, Justice Scalia, in his partial dissent, stated that, and that's true, there's no clause in the Constitution or laws that exist that prohibits the state from excluding people who have no right to be on their sovereign's territory. And under the Constitution also, Article 1, Section 10, in case of imminent invasion, which we believe is the case with Mexican drug cartels, the states can defend themselves, their citizens, and their territory. This is a legitimate role of the government to defend its citizens, and that's what Texas is doing.
Well, Carine, thank you so much for coming on and for your insights. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.